there! So today we are going to be doing another playthrough video of the in-hand solitaire deck destruction game, Monotheism. And we will be using the worshipper, the Haruspex of Scriptures. So I've shuffled this deck that represents a pantheon of gods. I have this worshipper card. I'm not going to go through all the rules. There is a rule book online. But basically, each turn, we will unveil the top card of the deck, revealing one of the gods in the pantheon. We will check to see if that god will act to try to impose its will upon the world. And then we will submerge cards, sending them back into the void from whence they came, represented by just sending them to the back of the deck here. The Haruspex of Scriptures has 3 faces that have the same text. That text is, if this is on top and you choose to submerge 3 or more cards, bless this worshipper instead of cursing them when they are submerged this turn. Normally, worshippers, when they get sent to the bottom of the deck because they are submerged, they will get harmed. They do not enjoy that process. And this one, if it's directly on top of the deck, can get by a little better. And it also says, in one face, if any unveiled gods are among the top 3 cards, an unveiled god from among the top 3 cards consumes every god next to itself. And on that turn, the worshipper will still be cursed as normal when they get submerged. So this can help convince some of the gods to consume each other. So should make it a little bit easier to win, because our goal here is out of this entire stack of cards to end up with only 1 remaining. So to set up, I've already shuffled, but why not? I can shuffle some more. The deck is totally randomized, and it is upright, face down. I have this worshipper card, the nameplate is upright, and we're ready to play. It's in my hand, and the first turn, we will go through the steps of unveiling the top card. You may bless the nearest worshipper. If so, this moves to the bottom transformed. So I have a choice as to whether or not I want this to act. Right now, I think I don't. I don't really need to bless the worshipper. The worshipper's doing pretty well. So I will move on from acting to submerging. I can choose either number from the top card or the leftmost number from the second card down. So I can choose either this 2 or the 3, and unfortunately this card is veiled, and veiled gods are treated as having no numbers and no abilities, so I can only choose between either 2 or 3 cards to send to the bottom. When I'm sending cards to the bottom of the deck, let's say I'm choosing 3, the card that was on top can go anywhere in the stack. So it could stay on top, go in the 2nd position, or go in this 3rd position. And any of these sets, I pick one way to orient them, and I send that stack of cards to the bottom. That's basically the entire set of rules. So as we go through the rest of the game, we'll be able to play a little faster. If no gods have a solar aspect, and this should say 3, 4, or 5 cards from among the bottom 5 are consumed by the void. Well, currently, we've only unveiled 2 cards. This has a lunar aspect. This has a lunar aspect, so this condition is met. So this will happen. If this condition had not been met, if some of the gods did have a solar aspect, we would have done what it says here. Otherwise, this consumes 1 card from among the top 3. But that will not happen. Instead, we do this. 3, 4, or 5 cards from among the bottom 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have to choose at least 3 cards to be consumed by the void. I'm going to get rid of all of these veiled gods. I kind of like the idea of having this stay, and if my worshipper, I only have 1 here, is ever consumed, either by a god or by the void or from being cursed too many times, I will lose. so I would prefer not to make that choice. So these 3 cards are now consumed. I'm just going to hold them in my hand like so. The entire game can be played in hand, and I get to keep going. I can choose to submerge either 9, 5, or only 9 or 5. Those are my choices. Since it's the beginning of the game, I kind of want to see a few more cards. Actually, I don't really need to. I feel like this card alone, as long as I don't reveal too many cards with a solar aspect, could be enough to pretty much chew through this deck and achieve monotheism without much help. So I'm going to submerge 9 cards. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I am going to send it to the bottom of that stack of 9. I didn't read everything this would do when it transforms, but I can read it to you now. It says that if I had transformed it, if this began unveiled, this consumes the nearest card repeatedly until this has consumed 2 gods with a lunar aspect. So I kind of want to keep this really helpful deity, whatever that horrible bird skull entity is, away from that. So I'm going to create as much space as I can between them. And I'm ready to, again, unveil, check to see if it acts, and submerge. I'm just going to get that tip sheet out of here. You don't need to stare at it the whole time. If this is next to a god with a lunar aspect, this consumes that god. Then this moves to the bottom transformed. And if it transformed, if this began unveiled, any god from among the top 6 cards consumes every card next to itself. So that seems pretty helpful. Unfortunately, it does have to consume something to become this helpful entity. But I think that's probably fine. And let's see, I'm getting somewhat near the worshipper, but I'm still going to go ahead and submerge 8 cards. And I'm going to put this at the bottom of that stack of 8. Because potentially, if this next veiled god has a lunar aspect, then they can wind up right next to each other and satisfy that condition for the future. So, unveil this. It does not have a lunar aspect. It says, if this is next to a worshipper, move that worshipper to the bottom, then this consumes the 4 cards nearest to itself. So I would like to try to get it near this worshipper. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ooh. So the closest I can get it is at the bottom of this stack. If I put it at the bottom of the stack, then the next time that it is revealed, it will be able to submerge 3 cards and bring the worshipper to the top. This worshipper, because it can bless itself when it's at the top of the deck, I would probably like to get it to the top of the deck as often as I can. So just putting that there seems like an excellent plan for me. If there is a pair of veiled gods next to each other anywhere, choose one such pair. After peeking at both these gods, you must unveil one or both. Then a god unveiled this way consumes every card next to it. Otherwise, curse the nearest worshipper. Okay, well, there is at least 1 pair of veiled gods. There are a lot of choices here. And I think I want to choose these 2, because if this has a lunar aspect, it'll be able to get near this one. So these are the 2 cards I'm going to peek at. This one says, when this consumes 1 or more gods, this transforms, and it could become something that says, if this began unveiled, this consumes 2 cards from among the top 4. And this one has a solar aspect. So I've chosen a pair of gods that were both veiled. I've peeked at both. I'm going to unveil this one and have it consume every card next to itself. So these two cards get consumed. They're going back to this stack here. And because this just consumed one or more gods, it transforms. So I rotate it. There we go. Now, I need to submerge either 4 or 3 cards. Unfortunately, I will be submerging my worshiper. I'm going to choose to submerge 3, leaving this one on top. When my worshiper is submerged, they will get cursed. When I curse it, I'm looking at this symbol. It's telling me to flip over the card. So the worshiper was happily reading this book. Oh, the book is shuttered. The worshiper is looking a little worse off. That's okay. I have faith that we will be able to help. Okay. You may bless the nearest worshiper. If so, this moves to the bottom transformed. At this point, I think I would like to do that because my worshiper is looking a little bit sickly. So I'm going to bless them. And this moves to the bottom transformed. So it's transformed and on the bottom of the deck. When this consumes one or more gods, bless any worshiper, then move that worshiper to the bottom. Oh, this seems like an excellent thing to keep near the Haruspex of Scriptures, because the Haruspex of Scriptures can potentially let a god start consuming other gods next to itself. And this will be very helpful for me if it starts consuming things. So I'm going to choose 6 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Send them to the bottom and keep this here at the top to be very near that worshiper. Unveiling another card. If this is next to a god with a lunar aspect, any god from among the top 4 cards consumes every card next to it. Then move a worshiper to the top of the deck. And there's some reminder text down here. If this has been consumed, it cannot move a worshiper to the top of the deck. That seems sensible enough. It will probably cease to impose its will upon the world after it is removed from the world. Okay. And I would like to have it near a god with a lunar aspect. I think I'll choose 7 cards. I'm still trying to reduce the number of things that I unveil with the hope that I will be able to continue satisfying this condition of no gods having a solar aspect. And I'm going to put this right there, sending them to the bottom and unveiling another card. So this is the first deity that I've unveiled that does have a solar aspect, and this happens to be a particularly horrible one to have unveiled because it's going to be difficult to get rid of. When a god attempts to consume this, instead, the bottom 3 cards are consumed by the void. This also has some reminder text. If this is in the bottom 3, this is consumed also. Okay, so we need to somehow either make this be in the bottom 3 cards when something tries to consume it, or have this be consumed by the void. Those are both going to be somewhat difficult to arrange, but we're going to try our best. Right now, I'm going to send it right where it was. I don't want it to be anywhere else. Okay, this is not yet next to a god with a lunar aspect, nor can we easily make that happen. Okay, I certainly don't want to end on this, so I don't want to submerge 8 cards, which means I am choosing 6. Where do I want this to be among those 6? I think I will put it here at the bottom of this deck, just in case this has a solar aspect. It might. I don't know yet. Now I know, and now I know that it doesn't. Well, that's too bad. If this is next to a god with a solar aspect, this consumes all veiled gods. That does seem helpful enough. I would like to get rid of all these veiled gods, but I also want to get rid of this because I'm trying to make it so that I don't have anything with a solar aspect. It's also not very helpful to leave it where it is because submerging for 2 would bring this to the top of the deck, and this still seems too dangerous for me to allow to act. So, I'm submerging 4 cards. My worshipper is being cursed. I'm going to send this to this 4th position and hope that eventually this bird will consume it. This may consume any god from among the top 4 cards. If so, this moves to the bottom, transformed. If it transformed, it would become hideous and have the text saying, if every unveiled god has a solar aspect, all gods other than this are consumed by the void. Otherwise, this curses the nearest worshipper and consumes a god with a solar aspect. So, this seems like it would be very helpful if I made it so that the entire deck had solar aspects. Right now, I'm trying to do almost the opposite with my deck building, so I don't want to flip it. And I can either submerge 5 or 6 cards. 6 seems pretty good, because 6 will bring this other strange bird entity to the top. That seems good. Any god from among the top 4 cards consumes every card next to it. So I can choose one of these 4. I'm going to choose this. It is a veiled god, so it still counts as a god, even though it is currently treated as having no numbers and no printed abilities. So it's consuming every card next to itself, which means these 2 cards are out of here. This is still around, so it's going to continue to act, then move a worshipper to the top of the deck. Well, why not? I don't have any other options, so there it is, on top of the deck. If this is on top and you choose to submerge 3 or more cards, bless this worshipper instead of cursing them when they are submerged this turn. Well, that sounds much better than cursing them and leaving them looking terribly bedraggled. So I'm going to choose to submerge 4 cards. And in what order do I want them to be? I think I would like the worshipper to start getting closer to where it was before. I really liked having it near this helpful bird entity. So, the worshipper is blessed. It's moving to the bottom of that stack. Those cards are all moving to the bottom of the deck. If this began unveiled, this consumes any card from among the top 6. Then this moves to the bottom, transformed. It did not begin unveiled, so I don't have to worry about that. Either submerge 3 cards from this number, 4 cards from that number, which would leave this on top, or 6 cards from that number, which would leave this on top. I think I will choose 6, because I would like to put this snail elephant entity. I'm not quite sure what it is. I would like to put it just behind this and maybe allow this to consume it at some point. So they are being sent to the bottom. And I'm unveiling another card. If this is next to a god with a lunar aspect, this consumes that god. Then move any card to the top or to the bottom of the deck. There are several things that would be nice to have it consume, such as this, which seems too dangerous to allow to continue to exist. I'm going to choose to submerge 6 cards, and I'm going to move this to be right there. Potentially this will consume that. Potentially it will be consumed by this. I'm not quite certain which will end up on the top of the deck the next time I go through. If this is next to a god with a solar aspect, this consumes all veiled gods. Well, so it is. And so all the veiled gods are gone. They are all being consumed by this giant techno-primate-like entity. Again, I am not sure what this is. I have no idea why this worshipper would want this to become the one true god, but who am I to decide? Now, I get to submerge either 2 cards, which would bring this to the top. I don't want that to happen. 4 cards, which would bring the worshipper to the top, which sounds great, honestly. Or 5 cards, which would bring this mole entity to the top. So, 4 cards. I no longer need this to be near something with a solar aspect. I'm going to move it to the bottom because I'm going to try to create a little buffer in case I accidentally have something attempt to consume this, to make sure that I don't lose the gods that I'm interested in having remain in the deck. Now, if this is on top and you choose to submerge 3 or more cards, so if I choose either this 3 or the 4, this ability will trigger. So I could bring this to the top, or this multi-mouthed crocodilian type entity. What seems better? Okay. I think I would like for this to be on top because if it transforms, it will have a lunar aspect instead of a solar aspect. So I'm going to choose to submerge 3 cards. I've chosen 3 or more. This is getting blessed, which rotates it. I'm going to move it to the bottom of that stack. If this began unveiled, this consumes any card from among the top 6. I would like to get rid of this because all it can do for me now that there are no veiled gods is curse my worshipper. That seems unhelpful. So, get out of here. Then this moves to the bottom, transformed. Off we go. If this is next to a worshipper, it is not. So, all I can do is either submerge 3, 6, or 8 cards. I could bring that to the top, which I don't think I want. I could bring this to the top with 6, or 8. Okay. I will submerge 6 cards. there they go to the bottom. If this is next to a god with a lunar aspect, which it is. Any god from among the top 4 consumes every card next to itself. I think I will choose to have this consume the gods next to itself. When something is consuming multiple gods, it always consumes whatever is nearest to itself first. And then if 2 things are equally near, it consumes the top one first. So these 2 are both consumed. Now this is on top. If no gods have a lunar aspect, several do, unfortunately. So, otherwise, this consumes 1 card from among the top 3. It's going to attempt to consume this. It will fail. Instead, the bottom 3 cards are consumed by the void. That is this set of 3 cards. They are consumed by the void and gone. 1. Now I can submerge either 3, 5, or 9 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cards remain in the deck, so I cannot choose 9. If you ever have to submerge more cards than remain in the deck, they all get consumed by the void, which will include your worshipper, which means you have lost. If I choose 5, however, I can bring this to the top of the deck, and that does seem helpful. I am going to want this to be away from strange fireball-wielding mole entity. I would like for this to be at the bottom of the deck when this is near the top. So, I'm going to submerge these 5. Because I am submerging the worshipper, they are cursed. So, they're cursed. These all go to the bottom. If this is next to a god with a lunar aspect, it is. Oops. And I appear to have just caused myself to lose. I should have planned ahead slightly more. So, this consumes that god. It's consumed. Then this moves to the bottom, transformed. There we go. If this begins unveiled, it did. It attempts to consume the nearest card, which is this, which causes these to be consumed, which is my only worshipper. And so, that is curtains. And I will attempt again to try to give you some decent advice about how to play this game and maybe how to help your worshipper come to a slightly better conclusion than I have just helped them this time. Well, let's try again. To set up, after you've played, you need to make sure that all the cards are face up. So, here they are. They're all facing in the same direction. I need to shuffle this deck. That seems to be pretty well shuffled. And that is the entirety of setup. Shuffle the deck and put this worshipper at the bottom of the deck. We are ready to play. Starting, we unveil a card. And when this consumes one or more gods, this transforms. I would like to keep it fairly near that worshipper. I'm going to submerge 3 cards and put it right here in the middle so that it is one away from the worshipper, so the worshipper, if the worshiper happens to be blessed, would see this card among the top 3. So send those to the bottom and keep playing. When a god attempts to consume this, instead every god next to this is consumed by the void, and the nearest worshiper is blessed. If no gods are next to this, then this is still consumed. If this is consumed, no worshiper will be blessed. So, I definitely like the thought of blessing my worshiper, but don't really enjoy the prospect of this squirming away from every attempt that the other deities make to consume it. I'm going to send it to the bottom, and I'm going to move it a little farther from this entity, which I think I would like to have start consuming many things, and I don't want it to accidentally get consumed by the void if it tries to get this mouse entity. If this is next to a god with a solar aspect, this either consumes that god, or this moves down past the next 2 cards, then consumes a card next to itself. So I'm going to send these 4 to the bottom, putting this frog entity at the bottom of that stack, just in case this has a solar aspect. Well, which it does. If this is next to a god without a solar aspect, this consumes that god. Veiled gods have no aspects, and so this will consume veiled gods. So that's consumed. It's going in our consumed god stack, held here in our hand. And I can now submerge 3 cards. I'm going to leave it where it is so that it will end up next to that frog entity that was looking for something with a solar aspect. When this consumes one or more gods, bless any worshiper, then move that worshiper to the bottom. I would like this to get closer to the worshiper, so I'm submerging 5 cards and putting it at the bottom of those 5. When this is unveiled, curse the nearest worshiper. Cursed. Then veil this and move it to a random location near the middle of the deck without looking. So it's veiled, my eyes are closed, I've put it into the middle of the deck, and I don't know where it is. It's down there somewhere though, and hopefully I will never see it again. If the 3 cards nearest to this are all unveiled gods, this moves to the bottom, transformed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so unfortunately, I don't think I can bring the worshiper to the top of the deck this time. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I think I will... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to submerge this many cards. 2, 3, 4, 5. And I want to put it right here, because then I will have more options going through the deck the next time around to try to bring the worshiper to the top. Unveil another god. If this is next to a god with a lunar aspect, this consumes that god. Move any card to the top or to the bottom of the deck. I'm going to submerge 6 cards, which unfortunately curses the worshiper. If the worshiper is cursed one more time, then they have had it, and they will be consumed by the void. So hopefully that won't happen. If this is next to a veiled god, move that veiled god to the bottom. Then this moves to the bottom, transformed. So it is next to a veiled god. It's going to transform into something that says, if this began unveiled, this moves to the bottom of the deck. Then this consumes the 3 cards nearest it to itself. So that's on the bottom. This mouse entity is at the top again. I'm going to submerge 4 cards. I would like something to attempt to consume it soon, because I would like to bless the nearest worshiper. But I don't know what I will be able to do yet. When a god attempts to consume this, instead this consumes every card next to itself, then transforms. I'm going to keep it near this 6-armed frog entity. This is again next to something without a solar aspect. So that gets consumed. I can submerge either 3 or 6. 6 would bring this to the top, which in the end will not help me get the worshiper to the top. So I'm just going to submerge for 3 cards. I will move it to here. As a way for that frog entity to potentially play leapfrog later. I think I have stacked them in the right position for that frog to reach what I would like. Okay. 7 is good, and I can choose either 7 or 5. If this is next to a pair of gods that both have a solar aspect, consume any unveiled god. So, it is not currently next to a pair of gods that both have a solar aspect, but I'm going to work on putting that together using these. So I'm going to leave this where it is, relatively near those other things that have a solar aspect, and I'm going to submerge these 7 cards. They all go to the bottom. Bring this to the top. Its condition is still not met. Oh no, I counted wrong. And so, my worshiper is getting submerged and is cursed. I had specifically positioned this to be 5 away from the worshiper, and then I accidentally forgot about my plan and moved a card away, putting this too close, submerging the worshiper, causing the worshiper to be cursed. This symbol means that when the worshiper is cursed, they are consumed by the void, ending the game. So I am definitely noticing that it is significantly harder for me to pay attention to what I ought to be doing as I'm playing and attempting to narrate out loud at the same time. But I'm hoping that as I continue to do this, I will get a little better at it. So I'm going to shuffle up one more time and see if perhaps in a third attempt our Haruspex of Scriptures can manage to stay alive and finally winnow this pantheon of strange deities down to end up with only one remaining. All the cards are in the correct orientation. They have been shuffled. The worshiper is returned to having its little green nameplate upright. It is at the bottom of the deck, and we are ready to play. If this is next to a god with a solar aspect, move any card from among the bottom 3 to the top of the deck. Then bless the nearest worshiper. It's not near something with a solar aspect. I'm going to put it at the bottom of that stack, just in case this has a solar aspect. If this began unveiled, it did not. Every god next to a worshiper is consumed by a god next to it. Any god that is next to a worshiper, but not another god, is not consumed. Okay. Currently, only these veiled gods would be consumed, which doesn't really bother me any. So I'm not worried about whether or not this reaches the top again. I don't need it to be where it is because I would like for there to be space for a god with a solar aspect to be near that. If this is next to a god with a solar aspect, this consumes any 2 cards from among the top 4, then transforms. And this also has some reminder text. After transforming, this may act again. If it transformed, it would say, if this is next to a god with a lunar aspect, this moves down past any number of cards, then this consumes every card next to itself and transforms. So it might be able to do both within a single time of reaching the top of the deck. If, for instance, it was next to something with a solar aspect and consumed some number of gods and ended up next to something with a lunar aspect. Right now, that's not happening, though. I'm going to submerge 2 cards, like so. When a god attempts to consume this, instead, this consumes every card next to itself, then transforms. Well, it does have a solar aspect, so I'm going to leave it where it is. If this is next to a god with a lunar aspect, this consumes that god. Then move any card to the top or to the bottom of the deck. I'm going to submerge 5 cards, put it at the bottom, just in case this has a lunar aspect. Let's find out. It does. If this is next to a god with a lunar aspect, this consumes that god. Then this moves to the bottom, transformed. Okay. Seems helpful. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I would like to make it so that it winds up. Actually, no, I'm just going to leave it where it is. Oh, but that would consume it. I'm going to put it here so that it could potentially submerge 8 cards and bring the worshipper to the top. When this is consumed, all cards above this are also consumed by the void. Well, that's going to be a bit rubbish of an outcome. Or maybe it would be helpful. I don't know. We'll find out. For now, it's being submerged, and it is going right here, such that it would be 4 away from the worshipper, and this time I am going to attempt to remember not to put this beneath the worshipper if I don't really need to. When this is unveiled, okay, well, it's going beneath the worshipper, despite everything I wanted. Curse the nearest worshipper. Cursed. Then veil this. Move it to a random location near the middle of the deck. My eyes were closed as I did all that. Now they're open again. If this is next to a god with a solar aspect, well, that will be easy to arrange. I'm going to submerge 5 cards, which curses my worshipper, putting them in very dire straits indeed. On we go. If this is next to a god with a solar aspect, in fact, that's the exact same text as this. This either consumes that god, or this moves down past the next 2 cards, then consumes a card next to itself. That seems helpful enough. So, I'm going to leave it where it is, submerging 4 cards. Off we go. This is next to a god with a solar aspect. This consumes any 2 cards from among the top 4, then transforms. I'm going to have it consume this and this, but it starts with whatever is nearest to itself, so we'll start by consuming this, but When a god attempts to consume this, instead, this sacrificial goat entity consumes every card next to itself, then transforms. So, this is gone. This is gone, and this has transformed. If this is next to a god with a skull aspect, this consumes every other god. I don't know how I would read that. Would I read it as a skull or death aspect? That sounds kind of spooky to me. I'm going to have it submerge one card. If there are a pair of veiled gods next to each other anywhere. So, if my worshipper hadn't been cursed so many times, I would probably unveil these two and hope that this could consume this and just get rid of everything, leaving me with only these to work through, except that I'm worried that this would then wind up having to submerge my worshipper and curse them the final time. And that would be the end for me. Instead, I'm going to peek at these two. When this consumes one or more gods, this transforms. That seems great. Unfortunately, I was really hoping that whatever was here could consume things so that I could just submerge and get to it right away. But that's okay. I'm unveiling this. It's consuming every card next to itself. And it transforms. Now I can submerge either 3 or 4 cards. And I think I will choose 4. Send these to the bottom, putting it there to potentially become a snack for the thing that was just unveiled. This cannot act because it's not next to something with a lunar aspect. I'm submerging 6 cards. I'm going to continue to not have it be next to this. This cannot act because it's not next to something with a lunar aspect yet. I'm going to submerge these 6 cards. Off they go. If this is on top and it chooses to submerge 3 or more cards, it will do so. It is blessed. I'm glad that the worshipper is doing a little bit better. When I am sending them all to the bottom, if I move the worshipper to right there, I believe I will be significantly better off because this is next to a god with a solar aspect. This either consumes that god or this moves down past the next 2 cards, then consumes a card next to itself. Let's do that. 1, 2 cards. It is here. Consumes either this or this, the 2 cards next to itself. I'll get rid of this. The same thing. Go down past 1, 2. Consuming either this or this, which are next to it. Oh, if this is next to a god with a solar aspect. And consuming this. Go past 2 cards and consume this. Go past 2 cards and consume this. Go past 2 cards. Consume this. 2 cards. And they will continue to play leapfrog. I believe, through the entirety of the deck. I don't think there are any traps awaiting them. Unfortunately, because I have been narrating this, it really overtaxes my short-term memory. So, I'm not quite certain which deities have been unveiled so far. Some of them do prove to be very difficult to consume, but I think those ones that are... Oh no. Oh dear. Yes. So, here we are. I did indeed reach something that is very difficult to consume. So, perhaps, had I remembered that I had unveiled this, I would not have been so gleeful about the prospect of having these two frog entities play leapfrog all the way through the deck and attempt to chew through everything. As it is, I think there is still a chance, but we will see. This is next to a god with a solar aspect, goes past 2, and I will have it consume either this or this. If I consume this, it's going to get rid of... Oh, I may as well. So, it will consume this deity. When this is consumed, all cards above it are also consumed by the void. So goodbye. Our game of leapfrog is over. I can submerge either 5 or 4 cards. I will choose to submerge 5 cards and put it there. If this is on top and you choose to submerge 3 or more cards, I will choose to submerge exactly 4, blessing the worshipper, and I will put the worshipper at the bottom of that stack. If this is next to a god with a solar aspect, it is. Move any card from among the bottom 3 to the top of the deck, then bless the nearest worshipper. Any unveiled god from among the top 3 cards consumes every god next to itself. I will choose this, consuming both of these. This turn the worshipper will be cursed when they are submerged. I am submerging 4 cards, and I'm going to keep them in this order. The worshipper is at the top. I'm going to choose to submerge 4 cards again, putting them in this order, which blesses the worshipper. Now, I'm going to choose to submerge 4 cards, which unfortunately curses the worshipper, putting them in this orientation. If this is on top and you choose to submerge 3 or more, I will submerge 4. They go to the bottom of the deck. They are at the bottom of the deck. If any unveiled gods are among the top 3 cards, there is an unveiled god here. It consumes every god next to itself. I have this entire pantheon that has been consumed, a worshipper who has survived, and a single god remaining. I hope the Haruspex of Scriptures is happy to worship this entity. It's kind of cute. Many of the playthrough videos I've recorded have ended in me causing the worshippers to experience a really tragic demise. And I'm sorry about that. Hopefully I haven't given you the impression that the game Monotheism is just this terribly tragic experience. So here I've set up not one of the puzzles from the rulebook, but instead a situation that came up in one of the games that I played recently that ended in me losing horribly. This is the order of cards that appeared at some point in one of the previous videos. Oh. Setting out. I'm not quite sure what I would like to have happen. Some of the ways that I can imagine possibly winning would be to help this to transform, or get rid of the few remaining deities with a solar aspect and have this consume most of the others. I think I have a lot of options here. Some of them are probably good options. And I think in the video I recorded previously, out of these options, submerging either 3, 6, or 8 cards, I chose to submerge 6. Bring this to the top, and why not? I can just go ahead and do that again, and see if this time it turns out better for me. Off they go. If this is next to a god with a lunar aspect, any god from among the top 4 cards consumes every card next to it. Then, move a worshipper to the top of the deck. I think previously I chose to have this consume everything next to it. This time I'm going to choose this fireball-wielding mole, and these 2 cards are consumed. Then move a worshipper to the top of the deck. There we are. If any unveiled gods are among the top 3 cards, why yes, yes indeed. An unveiled god from among the top 3 cards consumes every god next to itself. I'll have this consume the cards next to itself. 1 is gone. When a god attempts to consume this, instead the bottom 3 cards are consumed by the void. 1, 2, 3. Off they go. Then I have to submerge cards. I can choose either 9, 4, or 1. If I choose 9, I will lose because there are fewer than 9 cards remaining. I'm going to choose 1. This turn the worshipper will be cursed when they are submerged. Off they go. If no gods have a... well, here's one. So, otherwise, this consumes 1 card from among the top 3. If I choose this, my worshipper will be consumed by the void. I'm going to choose this instead. Seems safer. And I can go ahead and submerge 3 cards, leaving this where it is. If this is next to a god with a lunar aspect, it is. This consumes that god, then this moves to the bottom, transformed. Off we go. This moves to the bottom, transformed. Everything is working out reasonably well. I'm going to submerge 4 cards, putting the worshipper here. They all go to the bottom. If this began unveiled, any god from among the top 6 cards consumes every card next to itself. I'm going to choose this to consume everything next to itself. 1, 2. And then submerge 2 cards. They go to the bottom. If any unveiled gods are among the top 3 cards, here's one. An unveiled god from among the top 3 cards consumes every god next to itself. That was somewhat close, but it seems that our worshipper has found a single deity to be pious toward. So that does seem better than the previous ending of being consumed by the void and whatever misery that entailed.
I paid a wizard to send me space, then she launched me from the trampoline.